A very warm welcome to the show. Now, the manipulation of the justice system to favor influential politicians facing corruption charges in Nigeria is being said to be the root cause of the continued corruption that's almost running the country aground in different sectors. Very human rights lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, in a recent paper presentation says some personalities who see themselves as untouchable in the society because of their affiliation or closeness to those in power are being aided by the government to commit more atrocities and impunity against the Nigerian state. Falana describes corruption as a major factor against the fair administration of justice in Nigeria. He says some persons convicted, sentenced and jailed were never found in any correctional center, while unemployed young people serve prison terms instead of rich convicts. Now, he's asking Nigerians to elect credible leaders and hold the government more accountable at all levels. Well, for more on this, I'm glad to be joined from our Lagos studio by Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thanks so much for joining us on the show. Now, let's take a look at the thesis by Falana that justice is almost like for sale to the highest bidder in the country, and the government is not helping matters. We have the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which was breathed into life in 2015. With the hope that things will change. But it looks like the more things change, the more they remain the same. What's your view?
Well, relating it to the topic at hand, which is the release of, or the pardoning of some convicted high-powered individuals in the country, you may come to that conclusion. But when you look at it very well, to say that justice is for the highest bidder, perhaps in the sense that, I mean, you need to be able to pay for good lawyers, you know, both on the side of the defense and the prosecution. The cost of, you know, something that is a trial that is supposed in other places that will take perhaps a few days, you know, you have it going on for years in Nigeria. So, you know, that's, if you don't have the means to sustain that, of course, it's for the highest bidder. That's the sense in which I think Mr. Falana meant that statement. But it should not be taken that perhaps he was saying that you go to the court to purchase justice from the judges. I don't think that was what he meant.
Okay, interesting indeed. But the issue of justice in the country is one that's making a lot of ordinary Nigerians actually have a rethink, because you could see, let me go back to Falana again. He was actually making an instance of someone who stole noodles and he was sentenced to jail and had to, you know, go through the entire jail time without anyone speaking for him, asking for pardon on his behalf. Now, you have rich politicians who circumvent the issues in one way or the other, or you see a situation whereby it's difficult for the government to be able to fully prosecute certain individuals because of their alignment to those in government. How do we go away from this sort of practice? How do we ensure that justice is served to everyone?
I think it would be expecting, well, we were expecting too much to believe that there was any war against corruption going on. And why do I say that? It is going to be difficult for people, you know, for a thief, let me put it that way, to, you know, say he's prosecuting or charging or arresting or investigating another thief. And our experience in this country is that hardly would you see anybody you can point to in government and say, okay, this one is clean. So who is fighting corruption? Who is the corrupt person? They are not talking about me. I'm not in government. I'm not, or you, you know. So it's like Fela will say, them. So to expect, it's like we're misplacing our hope in the government to think that they can seriously fight corruption. The tragedy of our situation, the way I see it, is that this particular regime, well, I'm talking specifically of President Buhari. His selling point was because of his avowed, you know, commitment against corruption, and that when we elect him, he will be fighting corruption to nail. In fact, if you go to any of the anti-corruption agencies, if you go to any of their offices, you will see it quite, just like you go to the police station and they say bail is free. But we all know that bail is not free. If you go to any of these anti-corruption agencies, you will see it boldly written all over the place. A quote from ascribed to President Buhari to the effect that if we do not fight corruption, corruption would, kill us, so to say, something like that. But he has demonstrated, with the things that have been happening, that, started happening from the moment he took over office, that that slogan was just, we were expected to treat it the way, Nigerian citizens treat, that police are saying that bail is free. We all know it is not free. So we are the one that were had, we were fooled, let me put it that way. And what is happening now is just a further confirmation of what has been happening since 2015. Don't forget that immediately they came in, they started wooing. Not that the people from the APC were not corrupt. We have a lot of, if you want to be giving names, I don't want to go into that. But it's like, they went for double strength in the sense that immediately they came in, they started wooing people from the other political party, In fact, the chairman of the party at the time, Comrade Oshiomhole, was at a campaign ground where he said that once you join them, your sins are forgiven. You expect a president that is against corruption to have cautioned him, but it never happened. So what recently happened is nothing. I mean, the pardon granted to these two governors is nothing really extraordinary. It's just that it's just confirming what has become known with this regime, with this government. It's so unfortunate.
And we've seen Malami, who is the Attorney General of the Federation, wanting to push the blame on the justice sector, actually saying that the judiciary has not been performing very well in helping to push for swift conviction of corruption cases. But here we have this same government, the executive branch of government, which it belongs to, dishing out pardons to those who have been convicted. What do you make of this scenario as the senior advocate of Nigeria?
Well, the party and the government itself is the party is a party of hypocrites. The government is a government of hypocrisy. When you blame the courts for not, convicting people or not, expediting cases of corruption, then when they are convicted, when you have people who are convicted, the same set of people go around pardoning them. This one that you are seeing is just a tip of the. If you know what is going on, actually, there are a lot of these ones are the ones that are convicted. You have cases where the state, the federal government in itself will say they are entering into plea bargaining, they enter into all sorts of arrangements, and you never hear of these cases, and you have a lot of money involved. So the reason why this one is making news is because we all know that they were convicted. There are cases, they appealed, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court. The sentences, the conviction and sentences were confirmed. They've been in prison, and then suddenly, the government says, the anti-corruption government and the anti-corruption president suddenly comes out and says he's pardoning them. He makes a joke of the whole thing. So for the Attorney General to say, you remember that at a point in time, there was a so-called sting operation where judges were targeted, some were attacked and so on and so forth. Even recently, a justice of the Supreme Court of Nigeria was a victim of this kind of behavior. You would think that, but what they would tell the public is that they are fighting corruption. But beyond it, beneath it is actually some, political whatever. Maybe take the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Onongen. The accusation was that they were fighting corruption through him. But the truth of the matter was there was going to be election petition. There was going to be election in 2019. There will be election petition, and they were afraid that if he remained the Chief Justice of Nigeria, they were not sure of where since the cases will still end up in court, whether he will be, susceptible to their influence. That was what happened. It had nothing to do with any fighting against corruption or whatever.
Okay.
This event now has demonstrated it.
Very interesting indeed, and I will just ask you, Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika, to hold on while we go on this short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about former NNPC GMD Andrew Yakubu that was freed by the courts and what that means for Nigeria's fight against corruption, including other issues like you have raised some of them. It's time for us to go on this short break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Somna Sambo, and my guest is still Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika, who is joining us from our Lagos studio, and we've been taking a look at the fight against corruption in Nigeria and allegations by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, that the federal government is pampering corruption, state governments are not paying attention to the issues of corruption, and Nigeria is where it is today because those in power are favoring their friends and associates. So good to have you again. And now let's talk about this latest one that came in. Andrew Yakubu, who used to be the former group managing director of the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, as it then was, which is now NNPC Limited, and him being discharged. Remember when this government came to power, it made a huge show of it, including some of the monies left in some building in Ikoyi and all of that, and lots of Nigerians were jubilating and all of that. When you see someone like Andrew Yakubu being freed, and let me quote what the judge said. The judge actually said that the evidence of the defendant, that's Mr. Yakubu, was not only credible but reliable, adding that the prosecution failed to contradict the evidence as required by law, which is the EFCC. And he said that unfortunately, for some reason best known to the EFCC, the prosecution did not do its job very well, because Andrew Yakubu has said that most of these monies were given to him by his friends, and he decided to stash it in his house. What do you say about this?
Well, as someone who, first of all, let me just make this clear. You've read part of the judgment. When the court also, if this same last week, Yakubu's son was previous. This same last week, you remember the case of the official, I can't remember his name now, of the pension, who was accused, charged with embezzling some pension fund, about 24 billion, I think, and the court, convicted him and said he should pay a fine of 750,000 naira. That's the trial court. This same last week, the Court of Appeal changed that decision, overruled that decision, and revised the sentence to 6 years with an order that the 24 billion stolen must be, paid back from by this same person. So the mere fact that the High Court in Kaduna State has found Yakubu, not guilty does not mean that's the end of the case. The EFCC has the opportunity and the chance to still go on appeal. So the decision may be revised on appeal. But being someone who, has been, I've handled a few of these cases. You have for instance, if you look at it very well, there's a law in Nigeria that says, handling of cash above a certain threshold amounts to money laundering. Then you need to explain how you came about that money. It depends on what Andrew Yakubu was charged for. Sometimes the EFCC, they lump a lot of charges when they should go for the ones that can be easily established and the person can be convicted. They sometimes prefer to go for higher charges that may be difficult for them to establish or to prove in court. So because these things were shown and all that, a lot of media trial has taken place, which is a weakness in the process that we are talking about. Before they even charge the person to court, the FCC would have gone on, media trial, people would have been convicted. But when the time comes for them to prove their case, the allegations in court, they find it very, very difficult to do so. If I may, for every offense that a person is charged with, if I want to be, pedantic or pedestrian, if you want to you have different kind of soups, let me put it that way. you have, ogbono, egusi, and so on and so forth. A cook, somebody who is trained in it, will tell you that for you to make this kind of soup, you need so, and so ingredients. So take a criminal offense, treat it that way. If you are accusing someone of stealing, there are certain things you must prove to establish that allegation. You are not going to establish it, by whatever you do on the social media. You must bring concrete evidence. And the duty of the judge is to look at the evidence you have presented and determine whether you have established those things, the ingredients that will make the offense. Don't forget that if, for instance, you can't make egusi soup without egusi, without lemon, the lemon seed, oil, palm oil, and some other ingredients. If one of those ingredients is missing, the judge will have no other option to say, this your egusi soup is not egusi, it's something else.
Very interesting. So I just want to cut in here.
So it's as simple as that.
Yes, I understand what you're trying to say, but aren't you worried as a senior advocate of Nigeria that a lot of richer Nigerians are escaping jail terms or being granted pardon, while a lot of poorer Nigerians are being sent to jail and no one is pardoning them, except maybe in a very few cases?
In fact, before they are pardoned, they will stay, if you go to Kirikiri and all those other prisons today, you find people who have been languishing in jail for years, go to court every day. Their cases are not heard for one reason or the other. Sometimes the prison people will say they don't have vehicles to take them to court. Sometimes the witnesses will not be there. So you are even talking about those that have been convicted. What of those that are still languishing in jail for nothing? You have a lot of them, a lot of people suffering that. Like I said earlier on in my intro, you cannot expect a thief, a corrupt person, let me put it that way. You can't expect a corrupt person or a government that wallows in corruption to seriously fight corruption. I think we'll be expecting too much of this regime to... So the people stealing are not the people outside government, they are the people in it. I remember my late friend, Mr. Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika, in 2014, when this, the campaign was just going to go on this current, I was challenging him. Why did you leave? You were the spokesman of this person, during the 2011 election. Why are you leaving him? Is it because you have lost out and so on and so forth? And the response he gave to me that time was that, look, I lived with this man for about a year. I was his spokesperson. I was living in his house, not that I was. So I know that you people, you are just deceiving. You're just deceiving yourself. Nothing would happen. Then I challenged him that if he would do nothing, at least this one on corruption, he will file. And he went into a long laughter, laughed for so long, and said, "Okay, you will soon know better." He told me a lot of things that time that I don't want to, But one thing he said to me that I can say publicly, that I can say on this run is he asked me a question, for instance, is laziness an attribute of discipline? Laziness, is it an attribute of discipline? And I said no. I said, okay, so you will see what will happen. For us to fight corruption, you need someone at the head of Nigeria that would lead by example, that will not be lazy, that will be hands-on.
This person we are talking...
My sympathy goes to... Yes.
This person we are talking about here is President Muhammadu Buhari himself. That's who you're talking about. Sorry, I interjected.
Yes, that's the person I'm talking about.
Because I want us to be very clear, because I knew that Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika was a spokesman in 2011. I interviewed him, including the president, during some press conferences that time. Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika was always there. Now, let's put things very, very straight as we try to round off this conversation. As Nigerians are preparing to elect new set of leaders, with the political parties preparing to bring the candidates that Nigerians will elect from, what would be your advice to the electorate?
Advice to
the electorate on, yes, as they are preparing to choose elect new leaders.
It is. That will be very difficult, because if you look at the field, The ones that you can, say do not have the stench of corruption around them are so weak, or people will not, vote for them because they believe that those ones will not win. In 2003, I was involved in the campaign of Chief Gani Fawemi. We went around the country, and our experience was people say, we know that you are the only one that can do it, but you cannot win. That's what people are saying. If a person like Chief Gani Fawemi in 2003 couldn't make a dent on the mind of the electorate, what do you expect? Who now in the field? Is it Showore or Mogalu or any of these other young elements that are campaigning to be president of Nigeria? What I would advise Nigerians is that they should look towards these elements and see whether they can, because if you don't vote for them, they can never win. That's the truth. But if you decide that you are going to vote for the same set of people, people who migrate from one political APC to PDP, PDP to APC, depending on the season, if those are the people you are looking onto, then we are not going to make any headway. We are not going to make any, the fight against corruption or the fight to save Nigeria will never see the light of the day. Okay. If you want to take these candidates one by one, you have people, even the chairman of APC now, he was facing corruption allegation and charges by the EFCC. Then suddenly they changed it. Nothing happened again. Look at their candidates, all the candidates. Which one of them can you point to and say is free from the stench of corruption? Go to the PDP, the same thing, And our choice, these two parties are the ones that will pick, okay, this is our candidate. The other one will say this is our candidate, and then we are now compelled to pick between two thieves. And then we expect that we are going to fight any corruption. It's not going to work. My advice to our people is look at other candidates outside these parties and see whether you can see any one of them, you can place your hope on. Seeing now that the ones that we saw, President Buhari, everybody was shouting and saying, oh, okay, it's against corruption, is this, is that, and all that. But see what has happened. We've been hard, we've been duped. That's what has happened.
Thank you so much, Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika, who is the senior advocate of Nigeria. I can feel your pains. Having been close to the late Chief Gani Fawemi, I know the struggles it will have been, going through the country with him to campaign to be president, and only for Nigerians to be telling you that, well, we all know his capacity, but unfortunately, he won't win. This seems like the same story that will be happening in 2023 again. We must thank you for being on the show.